Okay, thank you, Linda. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Growing Concerns for June the 20th. For this week, we're going to go through again a little bit of a crops update of some of the things that I've seen over the past week. We also have Holly Derksen, who is our plant pathologist out of Carmen, that's going to give us a little bit of a disease update. And then we're going to have Mike Wroblewski. He's going to be on, and he's going to give us maybe a little bit of a weather update and what we can expect over the next little while here. Maybe kind of an outlook as to maybe when some of the moisture will slow down for us, or how much moisture we might be still expecting to get. So I guess with that, I'm going to start with a little bit of the update. Starting to see a few things happening out in the fields, getting calls regarding just different issues. Seems that this is normally the time of year where some of these things start to show up and producers start to wonder what's going on in certain patches or certain areas of my field. Got this call the other day, field of barley that wasn't looking very good in some places, was yellowing, seeing some purpling even some of the leaves, in some of the spots. And went out to take a look at it and grab some samples to send away. I still haven't got them confirmed yet, but I'm really starting to think it's barley yellow dwarf from all the symptoms that were out there, and from looking at the plants, they definitely showed symptoms that would be very similar to barley yellow dwarf. And you look at the staging of the crop and the age of the crop, usually the later crops are affected more than the earlier crops. So in this case, it definitely looks like barley yellow dwarf. So once I get the results back from the lab, I'll have them and be able to confirm it for you for next week. But if you're looking or hearing some patches in fields that are showing up, there's probably several of these type of patches in the field that were showing up, and that might be one of the issues that's going on out there. Scott Day sent some pictures of a weed around this past week, and it's a weed that we kind of seen last year that kind of came in and took over a little bit in some of the wet areas, and it's northern willow herb. And as you can see, there's a close-up of the leaves, and as it's growing. Last year, we really didn't get a lot of information or a lot of pictures of it as a young plant. So when he's seen this, he started sending the picture around, and it was identified as northern willow herb. Last year, a lot of the unseeded land showed it. It kind of just all of a sudden came up on the scene and was on a lot of acres and was all over the area. What we are finding this year, or what I've been finding so far, is that it's not a very competitive weed, and that it wasn't that big of an issue in most of the fields that I've been seeing. And I know last year glyphosate and 2,4-D usually took care of it pretty easy. These are some pictures of what it looked like last year. You can see that it didn't grow to be a very tall plant. Probably at the most, it was probably a foot and a half tall. Real fuzzy type seed structure, and you could see that it was on several acres last fall. So I think it's a weed that if there's very little competition, it'll show up. But on a year like this year, where a lot of the crop is doing fairly well, we're seeing that it's not that big of an issue. And if it is showing up in crop, I'm thinking a lot of the products that we're using in crop for weed control are also taking care of it. So I was in a field of flax yesterday, and starting to get some drift complaints starting to show up again, and just wanted to show a couple pictures of the damage we're seeing in flax. So if this producer, you definitely notice the tips of the flax showing some type of herbicide injury. again, we sent samples away to confirm it, but looks very similar to what glyphosate damage would be on flax. And so again, just an example of some of the issues that we're seeing. Seemed like hilltops were definitely a lot worse. They definitely picked up more of the product, and you see some of the plants were actually dying off. And you can see where in some of the cases they actually are starting to throw out their tillers from the bottom and trying to compensate for losing the main stem. Some of these are going to make it, some of them aren't going to make it. In the case of these plants here, what we'll probably see is a lot of times a lot of these main stems will drop off or die off slowly, and you'll get your secondary tillers that'll take over. While we're talking about flax, a lot of producers are out there right now and spraying flax, and this field was a prime example of spraying flax probably too late. A lot of this flax, this flax, you can see the stuff that has been affected by Roundup is only probably about 5 to 6 inches tall. The stuff that wasn't affected by the Roundup was probably 8 to 10 inches tall, and the field hadn't been sprayed yet. When he did go in and do a headland, you could definitely see where it lighted down bad. And so if you're getting to be in a situation where you're going in late to spray your flax, maybe splitting up the applications, doing your grassy weed application or doing your broadleaf application separately. This way you won't heat up the chemical as much and do as much damage to the flax. So what I would do is probably pick the weed spectrum that's doing the most damage, whether it's my grassy weeds or my broadleaf weeds, and I go in and spray them individually and just take the first one out, wait a few days, and then come back in and do the other one. Well, I was out yesterday, also got called to field the sunflowers, so we're starting to show some activity or something, abnormal growth, and we started going through the field and looking, and we were seeing that we're definitely seeing in the overlaps where the sprayer was, we were seeing more damage. We were also seeing where maybe overlaps of past years where we were seeing more damage. And what we're going to be sending samples away as well on this, but what it's looking like right now is we might be picking up some group 2 injury on the sunflowers, and be a combination of buildup of group 2 in the soil, and then also the application of a group 2 product on the sunflowers. So we could be seeing some damage there. So again, just different things that are going on in some of the fields out there right now that we're just trying to solve little problems now. I think a lot of the producers are getting a lot of the spraying done, so I think it's going to be into fungicide application pretty soon. I guess with that, I'm going to stop the crops update right now and turn it over to Holly, and if she can give us a disease update.
Okay, Holly, all you need to do is click the button that says Show My Screen. There we go. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Lionel, for inviting me to speak again. So today I'm going to be talking about specifically cereal disease issues and just a bit of an update of what we've seen so far. So just as an outline, specifically Lionel asked me to talk about powdery mildew. I know in a lot of areas, especially in the southwest region where they've had excess moisture, a lot of powdery mildew has been showing up in winter wheat. I'm also going to talk about physiological leaf spot, which we're seeing a lot this year in winter wheat. And then I'm going to give a bit of a preview for Fusarium head blight, looking at the risk forecasting system that we have here at MAFRI, as well as talking about balancing fungicide applications. So I'll start with powdery mildew. The symptoms of this disease are pretty easy to identify. It's very much what it sounds like. So generally we see the symptoms on lower leaves, like we see on the right there. So these powdery masses basically on the leaves. However, If conditions are right, it can be quite severe where we see it on the stems as well and moving up to the upper portions of the plant. Technically, this disease can even infect the heads if conditions are right, so it's something that we don't always see, but it can definitely happen. These are both kind of the earlier stages of the symptoms. They eventually turn to a browny, gray color as the plant progresses and as the disease progresses. Often on the underside of the leaves or the other side of the leaves from where you see the powdery masses, you will see a dying off of that tissue. So it'll turn yellow and then eventually brown and die off. So the favorable environment for this disease, the ideal temperatures are 15 to 22 degrees Celsius. Temperatures above 25 will significantly reduce disease development. We have definitely seen temperatures above 25 so far this spring, but lately we've definitely been more in the 15 to 22 degree range. And the ideal humidity is 85 to 100%. So whether that humidity is coming because we have humid or humidex, or whether it's because we've had a lot of rain events. Definitely lower in the canopy, the humidity has been in this range for a long period of time. With ideal conditions, so in that 15 to 22 degree range and the high humidity, powdery mildew can infect a new plant and begin to sporulate again within 7 to 10 days. So this isn't something that just infects the plant and then it's done. Those infections that occur on those plants will spread and infect other plants. So this leads to more infections. So 7 to 10 days is a pretty short turnaround time. For most diseases, you won't see such a short turnaround time. So knowing that, it's easy to understand how when we have these prolonged periods of these ideal conditions, how this disease has been able to spread. And just to kind of further explain this, this is the life cycle of powdery mildew. So basically, once our spring infections occur, the mycelium will develop on these plants, and they'll release canidia, which can just reinfect, showing up these red arrows here, how the plant can just reinfect and infect other plants as well. And then eventually it will go back to the overwintering stage, which are Synthesia. I talked about favorable environmental conditions, but now I'll also talk about crop conditions that favor this disease. So excess nitrogen, lush growth, and a dense canopy will favor this disease. It just provides that perfect environment under the crop canopy for the high humidity and allows this pathogen to infect. So this is definitely something that we have seen this year in our winter wheat crops, where we're seeing really lush growth and good stands. Epidemics of this disease occur when dry and wet periods alternate, and these changes are accompanied by wind. And I'm just saying, does this sound familiar for this year? Definitely, lately we've just seen more of the wet periods, but earlier we were definitely seeing an alternating dry and wet and then high winds. So that's just the perfect opportunity for this pathogen to infect. And then with the differences in dry and wet, it causes the spores to release, and the high winds obviously allows the spores to travel a long distance. So how do we control this disease? There are varietal differences. Unfortunately, we don't have a rating for them in our seed guide. Generally, powdery mildew isn't something that is going to cause major yield losses in most years. Therefore, it's not something that most breeders focus on with their varieties. Other things are more important, like fusarium resistance and protein and things like that. So if you're wondering about your particular variety, you can contact your seed rep or try and find a variety description for it. Not all of the varieties give a rating for powdery mildew, but I was able to find for some varieties. Balanced fertility program, as I mentioned before, excess nitrogen can just promote crop growth that will promote this disease. And then there are fungicides. The number one thing as we talk about any leaf diseases is to protect the flag leaf, and I'll kind of at the end of my presentation talk about this more when I'm talking about balancing fungicide applications. But it's important to note that severe infections early can result in stunting of plants, and stunted plants will be more susceptible to further infections. The smaller plants obviously When they develop the heads will be lower in the canopy where there's more likely to be high humidity and the right environment for infection. So those affected plants may get head infections. So although I say it's important to protect the flag leaf, you know, if you're looking at a severe infection, there is a case where maybe you want to go in earlier and protect the plants as well. So the fungicides that are registered for powdery mildew are your propiconazole fungicides, which are Tilt, Bumper, Pivot, and Propel, Folicure, Headline, Prozero, and Stratego. So here with Folicure and Prozero, we have our Fusarium head blight products, and it's important to note that when you go in at your FHB timing, or if you decide to go in for Fusarium head blight suppression, you will also get protection of the flag leaf with products like Folicure and Prozero against powdery mildew. And the considerations when you're looking at a fungicide application for this disease is not only to consider what you've had up to this point, but consider the weather forecast. Is the infections likely to continue, or does it look like it's going to dry out? The potential yield of your crop, is it going to pay off, especially if you have to go in earlier than your flag leaf timing? How many times can you really afford to go in? And also your other diseases. For your other leaf diseases, most likely if conditions were right for powdery mildew, conditions were also right for things like tan spot and septoria and rust, depending if they've blown in or not. So although you may be seeing more powdery mildew, it's a bit more of an aggressive disease. Chances are conditions are also right for these other diseases. It's also important to think about, will I be applying a fungicide for FHB suppression? And again, I'm going to talk about this a bit later when I'm talking about balancing your fungicide applications, but it's something you need to consider when you think about how many times do I want to go in with a fungicide. Now I'll move on to physiological leaf spot. So this isn't a disease per se, or if you want, you can say it's an abiotic disease. So you do see symptoms on plants, but it's not caused by a pathogen. So here's an example of symptoms. So you'll see this chlorotic flecking. You'll even see lesions forming. Often they are defined by the leaf veins. They'll often have a dark center. It can be very dark brown or just tan colored. And as you may notice, this looks pretty similar to septoria or tan spot. So on the left is the picture of physiological leaf spot, and on the right is a picture of tan spot. So these are very easily confused, and it's important, if you're unsure, to find out what you're dealing with, because a fungicide application will have an effect on tan spot and further tan spot infections, but a fungicide application will not help you with physiological leaf spot, and therefore you don't want to basically waste a fungicide application on this. Here's another picture of potentially physiological leaf spot. This is a picture that I actually took last week of a field. It was a field of winter wheat, and this could be a physiological leaf spot or it could be tan spot. So really, there's no quick answer to figure out which one it was. I sent this into the lab to be tested. One thing I did notice in this particular field, these symptoms were basically showing up all over the field, but it was mostly on the new growth. And I'll go in a bit further, to talk about the differences between physiological leaf spot and tan spot to kind of give you an idea of what you're dealing with. But typically the tan spot, you'll see it lower in the canopy where conditions are more likely to be conducive to fungal growth, whereas physiological leaf spot, if you're seeing something primarily on the newer leaves, there's less likely to be a fungal pathogen. So the favorable conditions for physiological leaf spot are to have cool, wet spring and summer conditions, vigorous plant growth, and rainy days alternating with sunny, warm days. So again, this is definitely sounding familiar to what we have seen this year, especially with our winter wheat and our vigorous plant growth. It's also, when you see symptoms, it's a bit of a genetic predisposition. So some varieties are more susceptible to physiological leaf spot, and one of these varieties is CDC Falcon. So a winter wheat variety that is grown on the majority of winter wheat acres in this province. So We're seeing a high number of physiological leaf spot cases this year, and it's a combination of the CDC falcon that's being grown as well as this vigorous plant growth and the right environmental conditions. Generally, physiological leaf spot will not cause major yield losses. So ways to tell between tan spot and physiological leaf spot, as I mentioned before, are symptoms predominantly being observed on the lower leaves, or are they on the new growth? As I mentioned, tan spot will generally show up in the lower leaves first. We're very familiar with tan spot and wheat, and you'll remember that you often see it on the lower leaves. But if you're seeing something not showing up in the lower leaves and only on the new leaves like the flag leaf, that may be an indication that it's not being caused by a pathogen. And this one, I mean, are the lesions more blocky or angular, or oval or elliptical? Hard to tell unless you have them side by side, probably, to know whether the lesions you're looking at are blocky and angular or oval and elliptical. But this is one of the characteristics. Oval and elliptical applies to tan spot lesions, and blocky and angular applies to physiological leaf spots. This one, basically, did you go in with a fungicide without knowing which one you were dealing with and not see any effects? That would be a good indication that it's not tan spot, but physiological leaf spot. And the best way to tell is to send in a tissue analysis for chloride levels. Physiological leaf spot is related to low chloride levels in the soil as well as in the plant tissue. So although you can send in a sample to the diagnostic lab, this really only provides you with some of the information. The diagnostic lab can only give you what it might be due to the process of elimination. So you send in a sample to them, and they plate it out, and they don't see any fungal growth that could be causing these symptoms like septoria or tan spot. They basically tell you it's not septoria or tan spot, but you still don't know whether it could be something environmental or whether it's physiological leaf spot. So the best way to go is definitely to try and find a lab that will do tissue analysis for chloride levels. Now I'm going to move on to Fusarium head blight in 2012. So if you've been following the Fusarium head blight risk maps, this is the most recent one that went up yesterday. So the animation that plays on the website gives you the last 7 days of risk. So red represents extreme and orange represents high. So you can see over the last week we definitely have been at high risk for Fusarium head blight. Our spring wheat, most of the province isn't at the point yet where you see the infection, so it's not quite at flowering yet. However, winter wheat in a lot of the province either was at this point last week or is approaching this point right now. So the favorable environment for winter wheat, periods of continuous moisture, and the ideal temperatures are 25 to 30 degrees Celsius. However, if high humidity persists, infections can occur at temperatures as low as 16 degrees. So the forecasting system that we use looks at the last 7 days of data, and it looks at temperatures between 15 and 30 degrees Celsius, and it also looks at measurable rain events. And it figures out the number of hours over the last 7 days where we've had either temperatures in that range or measurable rain events, and calculates a risk. It's important to know what stage your crop is at and know that conditions can change rapidly, especially with things like thunderstorms that we've been seeing lately. Our weather stations, we do have a number of them across the province, but even if you have one nearby, there's a chance that you got hit with a thunderstorm that the weather station didn't get hit by, or vice versa. So it's important to consider what's going on in your particular field. But what else is important other than the environment? So you consider the disease triangle, which I'm sure many pathologists have told you about before. So you need the conducive environment, the susceptible host, as well as virulent disease inoculum. So knowing that we had the right environment, we have to think about these other two. There are variety ratings for FHB, so consider what variety you're growing and what the rating it's given. It's important to remember that resistance is not equal to immunity. So even if you are growing a variety that's rated as moderately resistant, know that this doesn't mean that it won't get infected. It may just show less symptoms than something that's rated as susceptible. So in areas where there's high disease pressure, just because you have a rating of moderately resistant does not mean that you shouldn't spray. Also consider disease inoculum. Obviously, we're very familiar with fusarium in this province, and we know the disease inoculum is out there. However, there were low levels of fusarium head blight in 2011, so that could mean that there will be less overall levels of inoculum. However, inoculum takes more than 1 year to break down, so there will still be still inoculum out there from previous years. As well, it's important to note that the causal agent of fusarium head blight also causes fusarium root rot. So although we didn't see tons of fusarium head blight last year, we did see quite a bit of fusarium root rot. So there was still an opportunity for inoculum to build up. So although I said what else is important, and we're talking about the host and inoculum, really what's important is the environment and knowing whether you have a favorable environment for fusarium head blight. So now to spray or not to spray for these diseases I've talked about. Well, obviously for physiological leaf spot, you're not going to be spraying because it won't be effective. But for your other diseases, environmental conditions, consider the forecast. I talked about this before. Crop stage, what are your big yield determinants? So, you know, you have the flag leaf stage everyone talks about, as well as you want to make sure that you're protecting your yield at the fusarium head blight timing. Early applications will not provide protections through to harvest. So when you make an early application, you're looking at 14 to maybe 21 days of protection. So it's definitely providing you protection, but not for an extended period of time. And then the question I get a lot is whether I should apply at flag leaf as well as at my fusarium head blight timing, or if I should do one or the other, and if I am doing one or the other, which one should I do? So I'll talk a little bit about the importance of flag leaf timings and the importance of flag leaf as a yield determinant. As much as 50% of yield is determined by flag and penultimate leaves in cereals, so that's your flag and then your second newest leaf. This is an example of the yield loss calculation that was done on a study looking at scald and barley, but it can be loosely applied to all leaf diseases. So it's saying a yield loss percentage will be equal to 2/3 of the area of the flag leaf infected plus 1/2 of the area of the second last leaf infected divided by 2. So people, some people deal in numbers and they want to know numbers. How much the yield loss is this going to be? Will my fungicide application pay off? And they want to pencil it out with numbers. And so this is something that can be loosely applied. However, it's important to note that this will differ between cereal crops, so barley, oats, wheat, and also will differ between environmental conditions. So a wet year and a dry year, you might see differences. I think in a dry year, you can consider the flag and the penultimate leaves to maybe be not as big of contributors to yield as you will see in a wet year. Another study looked at, this is specifically looking at leaf rust on the flag leaf, which I haven't talked much about rust because we haven't seen any of it in the province this year other than one early report in the Dauphin area, but nothing further came from that. So this is looking at leaf rust on flag leaf. It kind of can give you an idea. So just the importance of the growth stage and the severity of the leaf rust on the flag leaf. So you can see that at flowering is really when the leaf rust on the flag leaf will cause the biggest yield losses. Once you get to milk, soft dough, and hard dough, your yield has already been determined to an extent. So really at flowering is the most important time out of these growth stages that you want to make sure that you're protecting your flag leaf. And then the severity, basically, the more severe, the higher the yield loss. So back to this flag leaf versus FHB timing. So now that I've talked about the importance of the flag leaf, I also want to say that your FHB timing will provide you with flag leaf protection as well. So if you feel like you only want to go in once, I definitely tell growers, the forecast looks like it's going to be wet for the next little while and conditions will continue to be conducive to fusarium head blight. So go in at your fusarium head blight timing and basically kill two birds with one stone and get flag leaf protection as well as fusarium headblight suppression. You know, you may already see infection of your flag leaf at this timing, but you'll still get some protection out of it. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Linda, is there any questions?
No, I don't have any questions at this time, Lionel.
I actually have one, Holly. For the timing of fusarium head blight for application, when I've been getting this question probably a couple times over the last couple of days here. If the temperature is to warm up here and the heads are coming out, is there, how does the flowering, I guess, happen on the head, I guess, is what guys are asking.
Like basically how quickly can it happen, or?
Yeah, yeah.
I get this question a lot too, and I always defer it to Pam. But I think that from full head emergence to flowering can be as long as 2 weeks. The best time really to hit, I know the most recommendations say from when 75% of your heads are emerged to when 50% of the main heads are flowering. Basically, you want to hit as close to early flower as possible. So whether that's right before the flowers emerge or as soon as you see the first flower, that's basically the best time to hit for fusarium head blight.
Okay, yeah, no, that's kind of what I've been saying too.
Holly, I do have a question here. They want to know if there's anything specific to barley versus wheat diseases.
Pardon me?
Is there anything specific to barley versus wheat diseases?
Well, the diseases I talked about today, I was thinking mostly about winter wheat today when I was talking. I've probably been getting less calls on barley this year. I don't know if that's just because the most calls I've been getting on winter wheat. You definitely can see powdery mildew in barley as well. And you can also see physiological leaf spot in barley. So things like barley yellow dwarf, though, that Lionel talked about earlier, are something that I think we're going to start seeing more of. When you're looking at something like barley yellow dwarf, consider your insect populations. I'm not sure what you were seeing in that field, Lionel, but I know the aphids are beginning to blow in now, so we may start to see more barley yellow dwarf.
I guess, what about, say, fusarium control in barley compared to wheat? Any comment there?
Well, they do flower differently. So for barley, what you're looking at more so is head emergence. So you want to get in at full head emergence. You're less so looking for that first flower in barley because really barley is flowering as soon as it comes out of the boot.
Any other questions, Linda?
No, I have nothing else at this time, Lionel.
Okay. I guess I see, is Mike on, Linda?
Yes, he is.
Well, why don't we switch right over to Mike then, and then we could get the weather update.
Good morning, everyone. I'll turn everything on here.
Yeah, you just have to click the button that says show my screen, Mike.
I don't know if I really want to do that. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, I'm live. Good morning, everyone. It's been a pretty crazy week, especially for up in the northwest, the Ethelbert area. As you've seen, some of the values coming out of there since the previous Monday have been up to the 130, 150 millimeters. I've heard reports of up to 200 millimeters up around the Swan Road, or sorry, the St. Rose area. So lots of precip, lots of isolated thunderstorms. Some of these, as they went up through the topography, really slowed down their momentum to the northeast and dropped a lot of rain. So as you can see by some of the reports in the flood watches, there was a lot. Same with Swan Valley too, but that was more Wednesday, Thursday last week. So lots of precip. what I'm going to do, I think, in the next 15 minutes or so is talk a bit about the past, look at some of the totals, some of the values that we've accumulated. Then we'll look at the present, and then we'll go off a bit to the future and see what some of the organizations are saying for the summertime and the fall for weather and precip. So my first slide. The first slide that I'm showing is the total rainfall from the last 7 days, and this would run from the Monday, June the 11th to Sunday, June the 17th. And as you can see, everything varies from 8.5 millimeters to 105 millimeters. Obviously, this is just derived from the stations of ours and Environment Canada, and those are the values. So when you get thunderstorm activity going through your areas, you could definitely receive up to 2-3 inches in some of these thunderstorms that have heights of 60,000, 70,000 feet. So you can really see the blue lit up in the same rows. It just didn't stop. I was watching the rain actually fall around the midnight time, and boy, the rates of fall were humongous, and that kind of extended. You can see it over in Moosehorn too. That was the trajectory of that whole system on the last Wednesday and Thursday. The Southwest, I've been kind of watching Killarney a lot and noticing that the amounts are nice and low, which is the total opposite of last year. It seemed that the stuff, the locations right along the border were hit hardest. So I'm keeping an eye on those southern areas just due to the fact that it's been a couple of reporting weeks in a row that we haven't seen too much precip around the Boise Bay and Killarney region, but I'm sure that'll change in the next week or so. Here's widening out the scope a bit, the total rainfall from April 1st to June 17th. Now, we've used April 1st as the benchmark this year just due to the fact that everything started a bit early, so we wanted to get that whole picture in there. And as you can see from the values on here, 100 millimeters to 280 millimeters up in the northwest. Now, this isn't including the 2 more inches that fell on Monday in some of the regions like Ethelbert. So we're missing a bit there. The Gilbert Plains and the Grandview area really had a lot of precip also from Monday, so unfortunately the maps aren't really showing it, but you can kind of extend that light blue line a bit over more towards the Dauphin area with the 175 to the 200 millimeters. So this is kind of the opposite really of this time last year, where the southern areas once again were way, way above normal, and the extreme southwest. And as you can see, it's kind of it's definitely moved up north this year. The lower areas are down to, which I say down, but they're still at 125 to 150 millimeters for 2 months route, which is right around normal, as you see. Here's the percent of normal for that period, and the 100% is the yellow shaded area. And as you can see, most of the southwest and central are into right around the normal. There's a few spots that are a bit below, as I mentioned, the Killarney, and Emerson is perpetually reports low. It seems there's a lot of missing data in that Environment Canada station. However, it kind of concurs with Altona, which is down to the 85 to 100%. So we've got the southern areas that are just a bit drier than normal, and that northwest, boy oh boy, that's 238%. I almost have visions of this time pretty well last year. That area was looking the same amount. So the bad thing about this, I think, is that we're just starting to enter severe weather season, and it looks like we're a bit more active this year. There's lots more moisture available up in the southern U.S. that slowly makes its way up with the warm air mass. So chances are, although the taps in the short term are probably going to turn off for southern Manitoba in terms of precip, I don't think it's going to be shutting off for the remainder of the summer. So obviously we'll have to wait and see in terms of the climate. But the severe weather season is indicating that it'll kind of be a bit more active than last year for sure, which last year we had pretty well a non-active year except for a couple incidences up in the Parkland region. So there's the percent of normal, and for you guys up in the northwest, that's 2 years in a row, a lot of precip. And I must mention that eastern Saskatchewan, up around that Swan Valley, even got more precip. So that whole Shellmouth region, as you hear, is really backed up. And here's the proof: a lot of precip has fell. Obviously, through the winter, we didn't get too much, but if you recall, the area up around the Swan Valley and north of Roblewski did get a lot of snow in the late spring. So there's a lot of precip around, a lot of moisture around. I'm going to switch to some of the crop indicators, and this map here is the total growing degree base for April 1st to June 17th, and everything's chugging along pretty much normal throughout the province for GDDs. April really helped, and then it kind of really cooled down the latter parts of May, and it all averages out. Here's the percent of normal, and as you can see, it's a bit shy in terms of the percent low in the southern Red River Valley region, but you know, we've had three weeks, we've had 7-8 days straight of precip and relatively high humidity, so the sun's just not getting through quite yet, but that'll definitely change. So, you know, 80 to 110% of normal for GDD. There's nothing really surprising there. A couple hot spots in Wawanese and Souris. Here's the total corn heat units from April 1st to June 17th. And this is relatively normal, values ranging from 600 to around 1,000 units. So these maps don't change too much year to year unless, you know, something like a volcano comes through for a couple of years. So this is relatively normal. Now I'm going to get to the present weather. You're looking at the satellite photo from this morning, and you can see all the red to the south of us. There's a series of systems of low pressure that are sweeping right through the Dakotas and the Saskatchewan-Manitoba border, and it all emanates from it's actually a filling low or a dying low that's just north of, just southern Nunavut there, and it's dying out. However, the next day or so, it'll be a bit unstable, nothing severe in terms of precip amounts, maybe a thunderstorm, however, but not a big one, and it'll dump 3 inches. So anyways, that's the latest satellite. I just wanted to show you that there's a couple different systems here. There's the one to the south in the Dakotas and reaching into Minnesota, and it's kind of elongated through from the west. You can see it's clear skies in the eastern Saskatchewan, and it's going, you'll see the ribbons of cloud there. That's the upper trough that's extending from Nunavut. There's nothing too big about this one. It's going to kind of go through us tonight or later on around 5 to 7 o'clock tonight, right around bomber time for the western areas of Manitoba. This is a graphical forecast that I love to use because you've got a set of forecasters downtown that are constantly amending this product. It's basically for aviation, but it kind of tells you where the systems are. If you see that pink line, dashed line that's emanating through Saskatchewan, that's that upper trough I was talking about. And the red clouded areas are obviously cloud, but the big R that you see in southeastern Saskatchewan, that's where they're thinking that it might spurn off some thunderstorms. Why? The cloud's thinning out a bit, the sun's going to start to do its magic, and they expect maybe something will bubble up there. This time frame is for 1 o'clock this afternoon, so you can see that as the daytime heating builds up today, Saskatchewan has scattered showers throughout, and it's all about, this low is all dying out. So you can see they have showers forecasted for southern Manitoba. You see the R's, that's a thunderstorm symbol. Now here's the one for tonight, right around the bomber time tonight at 7 o'clock. And as you can see, there's no real cloud in our area. However, that's unfortunately, that gives us the possibility of some thunderstorms generating. So they're scattered, probably won't happen. The trough is dying out and the low's dying out, so it all depends on how much sun's going to hit the ground, whether or not things bubble up later, or earlier after supper. Now, I'll spread it out a bit, and we'll take a look at some of the short-term models. This is the Canadian model, and this is valid from now all the way out to the end of the month, and that would be Friday night, next Friday night on the 30th. And you can see we're going to get a bit of a break here for the next week or so. The green is up to 10 millimeters. The lighter green is around 5. So it looks like 5 to 10 for the Southwest for the next, right out till 30th of June, which is a relief. The models have been really adjusting the last couple of days because previously last week where it was looking like a lot more. But as you can see, there's a lot of red and pink off to western Saskatchewan and Alberta. And that's probably what's going to be on to us by the first week of July. It's not supposed to sustain itself in those amounts, like those are 2-3 inches, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, we're getting a couple-week break here, and probably a lot of us, especially the Northwest, need it. We still got a day or so to lag out until we see the water off the ducks and everything, so let's see. Now, I want to show you the American models because they've really been handling it in the mid to short term for the values, and they've backed off with some of those July values, but this is the same time frame as the previous one I showed, and it takes you out to 30th of June. And the green areas are happy areas to me. That's the quarter to half inch areas, so that's accumulated right to the end of next week. So both models are kind of concurring with each other, so as far as I'm concerned, that's a good sign, and we may get a break for the next 2 weeks. We need the heat, and we need some of this water to go away in the Northwest. So both models are insane. Now, the good thing about the American model, and I'm really starting to love this one this year because it's banging on with the forecast, they do take us out a bit longer, and this brings us out to the 6th of July. And you can see Manitoba there is pretty well covered in blue. The blue is from 1 inch to 1.5 inches. So that's the area I was talking about. That was in Saskatchewan for the end of next week, in Alberta. And there's the results of it. There's larger amounts all the way around us, and the models have been backing off for Manitoba and taking out these larger fields and pushing them more around the peripheral of the prairie. So that could be good, but whenever I see that big values very close to us, it tells me it's a transition area. Therefore, I don't know about its accuracy. It just, you know, it kind of puts a red flag into me when I see Minnesota lit up like that. So the mid-range American models are backing off, and they're lightening up on the amounts that first week of July were going to give us. So to be honest with you, 1 inch, 1.25 inches in the next 3 weeks is probably manageable for sure. Now, I just wanted to kind of confirm some of this American models that I've been looking at. Like the whole season, it's been pretty accurate. I just wanted to go back and look at what they were forecasting for 31 May and for June. And as you can see, the green areas in the lower southern prairies are above normal. So we basically got 40 to 50% of norm for June if you add it up and kind of average everything out. And the only bad thing about this, obviously, it's an American product, and it doesn't extend too far into Canada, but it extends enough for us to see the interpolation where we can kind of see what they're saying for southern Manitoba, the whole area. So they kind of have it bang on, because I'm going to show you some of the Canadian models, and they just scare me the way I'm just wondering what they're smoking sometimes in Montreal. Anyways, here's the long-term Canadian deterministic forecast. They're kind of deterministic, and plus they're based on statistical. You can see that they've actually updated their climatological records from 81 to 2010 to look at the norms for projections. The only bad thing about that is that it's taking out the huge amounts of rain that we got in the 70s, so any kind of rain is going to look like lots in the next 5 or 10 years. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. Anyways, here's the 3-month projection they put out at the end of the May. By the way, in 2 days, the new forecasts are out for the next 3 months, but it's not tomorrow yet. So here's the one that was produced on the 31 May, and it's June, July, and August. And this is for the precipitation anomaly outlook, and it gives us some guidance on what they think for the rest of the summer. And like they've been saying since last fall, below normal. And like we've witnessed, there's I don't think we're anywhere near below normal in southern Manitoba for the month of April and June anyways. So that's what they're saying, and obviously it'll be updated in the next week or so, but they're way off the ball. And they have been, to be honest with you, all spring. Here's the Americans. The Americans have been sticking by their guns, just like the Canadians were in the models, but as you can see, everything's a bit normal. This is their product that they produced on the 17th of May, and it carries you to June, July, and August. And as you can see, EC relates to equal chance of equal, above, or normal. So they're saying that nothing big is on the radar. However, except you can see the Pacific, Montana, southern Alberta, and southern BC are below normal, and that's a lot closer than the Canadian projection anyways. I'm going to take us a bit farther out because, you know, you have to look. This is produced also on 31 May by Environment Canada, and it covers the period July, August, and September. And if you take a look at this portion, they're taking away that below normal area and putting us basically at an average amounts. So they backed off a bit, but that really means that I guess we're going to get still lots of precip in July and August and September, according to Environment Canada, considering that they think we're drier than normal right up until the July period. That's all I have for now. Unfortunately, I don't have the new model run to show everybody. Those values that we saw last week for the precip, they're definitely substantial, and they kind of, it looks a lot like last year. However, it looks like things are going to calm down for the next couple weeks anyways. And we might see some kind of change in the first week of July. But that's what the models are kind of concurring about that situation. So the only other comment I have to make to reiterate is it is severe weather season, and it doesn't take much heat and sun to bubble things up when we've got clear skies. So just be alert for severe weather, because it's definitely going to be a bit more active than last year. Any questions?
I don't have any questions right now, Mike, but you should know that it is pouring here in Souris right now.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's it's a small little area that's going through, as you saw in the projections. It's you know what, it's nothing significant, except they are forecasting it to bubble up along that area. So let's cross there. I think Souris is doing pretty good compared to some of the other places in the Northwest. So. Not that you guys need it either, but thanks for that tip.
And Mike, just looking at this last slide you have up here and the spray casting, everybody can go on to that, right? That's kind of just on it.
Yeah, and I encourage you, when Weather Innovations is running it for us, it's a great tool. My only caution is, like all of these products, they're to be used as a guide. Don't use them in stone, and don't follow them by the letter, because it's just another tool in your toolbox to try to get some guidance on what to do. Obviously, models, you can use our real-time weather to watch the models. For instance, if they say a cold front's going through and you see a northwest wind shift for 1 o'clock, say, you can easily look at our real-time weather stations and see that it either came earlier than forecasted or later, and you can adjust and use the spray cast accordingly. So that's the only comment I have to make, is just remember it's a guidance tool, not something that's expected to take over from your common sense.
Great. Well, thanks, Mike. And
Okay.
Linda, if you could give the screen back to me, Linda. And one last comment, I was in a couple pea fields yesterday, and a lot of them are starting to, you know, get fairly big and are going to start filling in. So just a comment to the producers out there that are growing peas, or people that are working with producers that are growing peas, that you know, if you're going to be looking at any type of fungicide application, we're getting to the point where you're going to be needing to get it applied as well, because I guess one of the keys with peas is to get the fungicide to as many areas of the plant as you can, because a lot of the diseases do occur from the lower parts of the plant and work their way upward, and once this canopy fills in, it becomes very difficult to get good coverage with a lot of the fungicides or with a lot of the application techniques we have out there. So one caution there. And yesterday, just like Elmer seen last week, I seen this on the Metagosh Highway going in that country down there, and it was a moose with another set of twins. So looks like they had a good year too. So I guess with that, the other couple slides that normally are in, if you've got questions or got comments or want to get a hold of us regarding any questions, this is mine and Linda's information. And again, the information for the FPAs in Southwest and South Parkland. And I guess once again, I'd like to thank Mike and Holly for their presentations. Again, good information that helps us kind of keep up to date as to what's going on there. So thanks again, everyone. And if there's no questions, Linda, I guess we'll be ending the webinar.
That's right. We have no questions at this time.